Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're probably wondering why I'm sitting. So I'm a developer. I write code for a living. And I decided to try out some football, right? And a mixture of writing code and playing football is not always a good mix, right? So I did this on Friday, and it didn't go that well. So I'm going to do this sitting, if that's OK with you, right? All right. So yeah, and I think they say that break a leg on a presentation. So I actually managed to do that. Well, it's not actually broken, so it's not that bad. So that's a good thing, right? Anyways, welcome, guys. It's really great to be here, and such an awesome conference. And I'm really happy to be here. So basically, I thought that I'd start this session by reading a simple code for you. Unit testing your front end is just as essential as unit testing your back end. So how many of you write unit tests for your backend today? How many of you do this for your front end? So 3, 4, right? And the room was almost full on the backend side, right? Yeah, but this is kind of like, you could say this is normal because a lot of developers write unit tests for the backend, right? It's like routine these days. But the same thing does not happen for the front end side. So what I'm going to point out with this presentation, the message that I want to bring out is front-end testing is really important. It's actually just as important as the back-end, if not even more, because we're really moving to this front-end world where you have like full stack front-end page applications and stuff, right? Like you don't need a back-end anymore. So we really need to increase testability on the front-end. And so yes, I'm going to talk about AngularJS, I'm going to talk about TypeScript, I'm going to talk about the hybrid of these two, but I really want to also talk about TDD, right? This is like the core of this presentation, having unit tests and test driving your applications. So, AngularJS has taken us by storm, right? A lot of JavaScript developers are using it, it's really taking off. And just looking at Google Analytics, you'll see that Angular is really ahead of those other frameworks out there, like Backbone.js, Knockout.js, Ember, Backbone, and so on. And this is for the last 2 years, you could say. And this is popularity, right? So, like, who is talking? Like, there's been a lot of discussions on Angular, and a lot of people are using Angular. So, but it's a metric that gives us an idea that at least Angular is a popular framework, right? And what I love about Angular is really the way testability. That's actually one of the main motivations that I chose to go the Angular way. So, and you know, with Angular, you have your components, you have controllers where you define your logic. That's a really nice separation of concerns. You have model binding, data binding, two-way data binding, which is really nice. Yes, it's dirty checking still, but it's really nice. You have validation, client-side validation, for instance, which is also a good thing. Directives. Now, directives, I could be sitting here and talking about directives all day, right? But directives are really like the future of HTML, in my opinion, because you can do so many cool things with them. And they're really about creating your own custom HTML elements. And that's really great. This is also what we've seen in HTML5, right, in the future. So yeah, use directives when you work with Angular. We have localization, language locale, which is really nice. But there's one thing missing in this slide. Can you see that? Testability, that is correct. Did you know that Angular was designed from the bottom up to be testable? So the creators of Angular, they thought about dependency injection, IOC from day one. They thought about unit testing from day one, and that's really interesting, right? So with Angular, we can really easily write unit tests. We can really do it like we do it on the back end, you could say, in an easy way. But before we get there, I thought that I'd just give you an introduction to Angular. Now, out of curiosity, how many of you work with AngularJS? Yeah, it's like 40% maybe in the room. So that's good. So basically, Angular is, let's take a look here, for instance. We have the HTML here. We have ng-app, which binds up our module, our Angular application. And here's our definition in JavaScript. That's all you need to do, right? It's really easy. This line here in JavaScript. And suddenly you have loaded Angular, right? We have a controller, usually. The controller is defined here. Here you have your logic. And we use these directives, the ng dash directives, which are made by Angular, to bind to our controllers and use the different stuff from Angular. So basically here, I have a message. I'm just clicking on a message and showing message for you. And here's the controller code, scope message, set message, and probably we have a service that does this for us, right? We're injecting the service in the controller. And if you take a good look at this controller, you'll see something interesting. You'll see that the controller takes in dependencies, right? Scope and main service. So, and this is actually made so you could override those dependencies in your tests, right? It's made so you can easily create a new scope, you can fake main service and write tests. So that's quite interesting, I think. And then you have the main service. This is the main service. This is really simple service, just return a string, right? Like hello from service. And this is my own service, right? My own custom service. And so we have directive, and the directive looks like this, right? You write it like so in the HTML, and define directive like so. And we have multiple properties directive, right? Like up to 12 different properties. That's out of the scope of this session, but you can define different things, and then you create template, and so on. So that's really nice and all. Does anyone know who this guy is? Yes? Yes, so the answer was Anders Jelsberg. Right. Anders Jelsberg is a Danish guy, and he's the lead architect of the C# language. And he is the guy behind this thing here, TypeScript. How many of you have heard of TypeScript? Oh, I'm really amazed. How many of you use TypeScript? 4. Right? So yeah, and this is interesting because with TypeScript, we're getting a typed JavaScript, right? We're moving to this typed JavaScript world. And this is really interesting because we're getting the stuff from the object-oriented world. We're getting classes, we're getting interfaces, base classes, and the whole shebang, as they say. And I find this really nice. I find this really interesting. And I know that perhaps when you look at this, you're thinking of ECMAScript 6, right? And yes, ECMAScript 6 is just around the corner. But with TypeScript, it's much easier for scalability, right? It's really easy to get compiler feedback, right? You actually compile the code and gets compiled into JavaScript. So this is a nice thing here, and I'll explain why I'm talking about TypeScript here, right, in this context. But if we take an example here, here's some TypeScript code. We have a class human, and it has a method. We have an interface iPerson. Person extends human and implements iPerson, and we have some logic, right? Now you sit there, you write this TypeScript code, and it gets compiled to this thing. This is the compiled JavaScript code. And it looks horrible, right? It looks inhumane, actually. But the idea here is that you sit there, and as a developer, you write this code. You don't write this code here. This is the compiled code. So, yeah, but I do agree with you that it doesn't look good. But that's like the side effect, right, of a compilation, of a compiler language like TypeScript. Now, you take TypeScript, you take Angular, you combine them, and that's where the fun begins. So let's take an example here, right? How do we do this, right? You have a bootstrapper. Here's your loading. You load your module just as you usually do with Angular. So this is OK. This also kind of looks familiar. The difference here is that what we're doing is that we're returning a class, as you can see here, a main controller class defined in TypeScript. And we're using something here called lambdas, right? Now, lambdas are really nice. They're a really nice thing. What they do is that they preserve the lexical scope, right? So you don't have to worry about this in JavaScript. And this is a benefit. And the same thing we're doing here for the service and directive and so on. And that's really nice. Then we have, this is the controller. This is how it looks in TypeScript code. As you can see here, we have type definitions, right? So we're using interfaces. interface for scope, and we have an interface for our service, and so on. So we have the type definitions library that we definitely typed library that we use for TypeScript. And so we're injecting our our dependencies here in the constructor, and then we're calling this method, which is called setMessage, right? That we saw earlier. Now the cool thing here is that we actually have a class here, right? And when we write our test, we can actually instantiate a class and assert on behavior, right? When we write the unit test. That's really cool. And it's really clean also. Now, I work with C#, so I'm a .NET developer really, but now I have, I've realized that I've become full stack developer because of the front end explosion, you could say. But in any case, like coming from C# or Java, when you look at this code, you actually recognize stuff, right? It looks familiar and it looks clean. And at least that is my opinion. So yeah, so your control looks like this in TypeScript. And then you have your service, you have the interface there, and then the services implements the interface and so on, and then the same, again, hello, just a simple string, right? And then this is directive, it looks like this. You could do it like this, basically. And then we move on to the HTML, and as you can see, this is how you bind things. You use alias here for your controller. This is probably familiar today if you work with Angular a lot. And then you just print out the message, which is a field or a property on the controller class, right? Right. So with great power comes a great responsibility. This is what we've learned from Uncle Ben, right, from Spider-Man. And when we have this great power, Angular and TypeScript, the hybrid, that's where the fun begins. And this is where we get to the core of this presentation, and that's test driving the whole stack. So for this, you need three things. Here is a symbol. This is Jasmine. Does anyone know what this symbolizes? Don't be shy. Yes, so this is the Jasmine testing framework for JavaScript. This is what you could use. And then you have a little thing here called Karma. And Karma is the test runner that you can use to run your tests in JavaScript. And this one is really, looks really like a myth, right? I mean, this is really hard to understand, but this is city somewhere, right? Does anyone know where the city is? Yes, I heard some Istanbul over there. That is correct. This is Istanbul in Turkey, and this is basically symbolizes the Istanbul code coverage plugin for Karma that you can use. But today, if you install Karma, you'll get the Istanbul plugin bundled in Karma-coverage. So this is for code coverage, basically, and that's really nice. All right, so we have those tools here, right, at hand. And then we have two options. We can either write our test in plain JavaScript, or we can write our test in TypeScript. And option A looks like this, basically. Here's just an example, again, the controller and everything. And if you look here, we have here before each test, mock up my app, which is the module, and then inject my dependencies. Now, Angular.mock is Angular-mock, which comes with Angular. So this is the mocking framework from Angular, which you can use. And then this is your test here, and this is simple behavioral test, right? It should call main service, get message when main controller is loaded, spy on the message, and then assert that the message is called, right? The method. And then we have option B, which is writing the test in TypeScript, and it looks quite similar. Quite similar than the other example. The only difference here is really the lambdas that we're using, right? And then if you look closely, you'll see here that we're actually instantiating the controller here, like so, and doing our assertions, right? So we have an object. We create the object, and we assert method call. All right, so we're sitting there, we're writing the test, then we run the test with Karma, and this is just running Karma from command line. It's like a raw way of doing it. I will also do a demo where I show you how to run this from WebStorm. So this is basically just running Karma test runner like raw, in a raw way. And you run it, and then you get red feedback. I know it's kind of hard to see, but you get red text basically saying, OK, you wrote your tests, and you're getting red feedback, right? So you write the logic, you refactor, and then you get green feedback when you run the test again. So basically, red, green, refactor, right? That's the TDD cycle. Once you're done, you get code coverage. So this is what gets generated for you. And then you can click on the different controls and services, and then you can get more information. Like, for instance, here, if you look here, the green stuff means it's covered by tests. Red means not covered at all, and yellow is like partially covered. So, OK, I thought that I'd show you a demo. And demos are always interesting. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes both happens, which is really interesting. So let's see. All right, so what I've done here now, I've just written the shell of the application, and I'm going to drive it test first. So you have your bootstrapper here, loading everything, as I showed you earlier. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a test. Just to save time, I've generated everything. And this is the test. This is what you also saw on the slide. So, and I'm using WebStorm. So what we'll do is we will run Karma configuration with coverage. See what happens. All right, it's saying that getMessage method does not exist, right? So let's implement that. So we go to the service. Then we type getMessage. And I'm going to start by just returning an empty string. Save. And what I have here is auto watch, right? So when I save, it will run the test instantaneously. So now it's saying expected spy get message to have been called, right? So now it's registering that the get message was implemented, but it's not being called yet. So we go to the controller, and then we will create message. Here we go, and then we will basically say like so. Call the method, save. And let's see here, did I forget something? Let's see. Let's try again, save. It's a bit slow, I have to say. Like WebStorm is like, I really like WebStorm. I use it a lot for front-end development, but let's see here. Did we forget something? There we go. So WebStorm was a little slow. This happens sometimes, but WebStorm is getting better. We have WebStorm 9.0 right now, and I really like it. So now the test is green, right? So we have made the call, and that's really great. So the next thing I want to do is I want to write a new test, and say that it should set message to hello TDC. One main. There we go. I'm going to blame the table here, right, for my horrible typing. All right, so basically, we'll do like this, and then we will just to save some time, we will load the controller again in the test, and expect the main controller message to equal hello TDC, right? And then save. And the test is red, right? And then we go to the service and basically type hello TDC. Save. Ooh, OK. Again, you see here the watcher is too fast. So sometimes when you type, if you type fast, the watcher will not be synced with what you're typing. So basically, you save again. There we go. Great. And the last thing we want to do is we go to the HTML, and we bind our controller, main controller, and we print out the message. And we cross our fingers and run our application. Here we go. Cool. Probably you cannot see that well. There you go. Yeah, so that's cool. So we've run this TDD, and that looks cool. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is test automation, right? So you're sitting there writing your application TDD way, but you probably want to automate things, right? So you have a build server, you have automated unit tests that are running in your build configurations. For this, you have several options, right? You have grunts like TeamCity, Jenkins, Bamboo, and so on. Coming from the .NET world and sitting in a .NET project at a customer, I'm used to TeamCity. So, but I've also seen this combination here, Grunt and TeamCity, which is also interesting. In any case, with Grunt, you have watchers, and that's really great. It looks really cool. For more like heavy stuff, we have TeamCity. And I thought that I'd just show you how you could set it up in TeamCity. So you basically have a build configuration. And in your build configuration, you define build steps. So, and the interesting thing here is this part, because what you want to do is you want to compile TypeScript code first, right? In the build, compile this code and then run the tests. So this is quite important when you're using Visual Studio. So this is a nice notice. And then you just have different build steps. So build step 1, for instance, could be command line. And in this case, you just run a command line for starting Karma, and it's just basically Karma start and then Karma conf.js and run it, right? And then you have like, this is the whole steps that you have, for instance. You have running Karma, and then you're creating like a coverage folder where you put all your coverage files. And then when you run that, you'll see that in TeamCity, it will look like this. And yes, you're probably wondering why this is censored, because it's a real example from production to show you how we actually do it. And as you can see here, you have like a JavaScript test build configuration, just as we do for the backend, right? And here's the number of tests passed. And yeah, and when you click on those tests, you'll get more information, like the status and what happened to the test, and the name of the test, and OK status, for instance, or fail. And you click on one of those tests, you get even more information, like as I showed you earlier. Now, what's interesting here is that the red parts here are basically anonymous function calls, right? Those are interesting, because you can't really test cover anonymous function calls. You have to use hooking or something like hooking. You hook something, and then you assert that it was called. The same thing as overriding in the backend, because anonymous function calls are created as the language is running the code, right? They're dynamic. So this is really hard to cover by tests. So it's understandable. It's understandable that if you're sitting at a customer and you're writing tests, and then you have, let's say, low code coverage because of this part, because of the anonymous function calls, this is kind of understandable. There are other ways to test this situation. So yeah, so it's no issue at all. And in my opinion, like code coverage ratio, I think around 85% should be okay. Like that should be enough. 100%, that's just silly. So you don't need to cover your code 100% by tests, because there are things that you simply cannot write tests for, right? And then especially with ECMAScript 6 coming around, we have getters and setters and everything, and those are like there's no need to write tests for those, right? Because they do what they do. So I think the magic number is around 85%. I believe it is there, and but if you have like other ideas, please talk to me afterwards. I'm really interested to look at that. And what I wanted to show you as a last thing is some news, right? So the TypeScript team last week announced that they will be aligning TypeScript with ECMAScript 6, right? And that's really a cool thing, because there's been a lot of discussions in the community, right, about TypeScript, and things like what is the need of TypeScript, right? I mean, when ECMAScript 6 is coming, but the TypeScript team answered by this blog post last week, and they said that, yeah, definitely, we know that ECMAScript is coming, ECMAScript 6 is coming, and we're aligning to it, and the JavaScript typing community is really growing. You have also Facebook's Flow language, which is typed in JavaScript, And probably the most interesting thing here is the TypeScript team is communicating with the Angular team about a new project called @script, right? So the JavaScript community is really looking into typing, type definitions, and just having typed JavaScript. It's really taking off. I find this really interesting, and personally I'm really looking forward to TypeScript 2.0 and seeing what happens there. So I think I have like perfect timing because now I have like 5 minutes for questions. If you're interested, just ask me now. If you're not interested, just ask me afterwards. You're probably also hungry or tired. There's lunch afterwards. Yeah. So any questions? Okay, so check out my blog. I'm like trying to keep it very active, like talking about TypeScript and Angular in general and everything else. Send me an email if you have any questions. Tweet to me. And yes?
Well, TypeScript obviously is easier to learn, easier to read, but do you think you should start learning JavaScript properly first and then only use TypeScript as a way of improving your code? Or do you think it's okay to not learn JavaScript properly and then go straight to TypeScript?
Right, so the question is, if you start out with JavaScript, if you want to check out TypeScript, right? Start out with TypeScript, and you haven't worked with JavaScript before. Do you need to learn JavaScript first, or do you just jump to TypeScript and use it and learn that instead? My answer is check out JavaScript first, learn how JavaScript works, get familiar with JavaScript. We're getting spoiled these days, and as developers, we're getting spoiled over time, right? Things are getting easier for us. Our everyday lives are getting easier, right, than 10 years ago. So definitely, but I think that you should definitely learn how JavaScript works, how the mechanisms work, because TypeScript is, after all, just a compiler, right? It's a compiler that compiles into JavaScript, and we don't know how the future looks, right? So yeah, definitely check out JavaScript first if you're starting out. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you for coming. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll talk afterwards if you have questions. Thank you.